Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 448. My opponent played d4. Here, let's reverse the board here. My opponent played d4, and he was a higher rated opponent, so I decided to play something solid. I went with d5, and after c4, I went c6, the Slav defense. And now my opponent played e3. It's an interesting way to play. Sometimes I would play that myself. Well, usually I play knight f3 and then e3. But we get to the same position, so it's a position I'm familiar with from the white side as well as the black side. This way of playing avoids the win-hour gambit. If the knight c3 comes out first, then black has the move e5. But with the pawn on e3 already, there's no point to this move. Okay, so I go e6. We get the Semi-Slav, knight f3, knight bd7. These are the normal moves. And now bishop to d3. So this allows the Meran variation, which is what we play in the game. A lot of times players these days will avoid the Meran variation by playing some other move. You can move the queen to c2, maybe even queen b3, I'm not sure. Looks like queen c2 is very popular. Bishop to d2 is a possibility, allowing rook to c1. So those are sort of anti-Meran moves, but bishop d3 allows the Meran. And pawn takes, bishop takes. The thing about the Meran is it gives black some activity here. It gets this pawn to b5 with tempo. He's got a little more space on the queen side, and he has an active plan. The idea after a6 is to defend this b-pawn with the a-pawn, and then just push on with c5. Let's see, you can also play bishop b7 first, but that, in the long run, that's the kind of plan you have, is pushing these pawns forward, because you want to open up a diagonal for the light squared bishop there. So I go a6 immediately, and my opponent castles. That's not a bad way to play, but the main line is e4. And I just want to show you some of the sharp lines you can get into with e4. Yeah, typically black plays c5 here, just going ahead with his plan, ignoring white's plan. And then white can push on with either e5 or d5. Both those are playable moves and lead to interesting complications. So e5, let's just show you this one a little bit. You can take the pawn here, so now two knights are hanging. And this knight can grab the pawn on b5. A little desperado move because after you take back, there's time to grab the pawn on f6. And then here's a slight nuance here that black does not want to take back with the knight. If he takes with the knight, it seems like the most natural move. The bishop gets to take this pawn with check. And so that's, you don't get to, there's no tricks here. You play bishop d7, and white has a slight edge in development. But if you play it the other way, if you take with the pawn, then bishop takes b5 is no longer possible because of queen a5 check, picking up the bishop. So that this pawn is actually defended by the queen check, and it's only when the knight is out of the way that that this is a problem of bishop takes. So black keeps an extra pawn in this line. But you see, white can just castle and have good development, and black's structure is kind of messed up. So anyway, it leads to an interesting game. That's one way to play it. And then the other way to play it is with the move d5 instead of e5. And then c4, pushing on, attacking the bishop. The bishop could just drop back, or it can go in. White can go in for complications with d takes e6. Once again, creating these situations where you have two pieces hanging, the knight's hanging here, the bishop's hanging here. And you can take the bishop, or you can take the pawn. Either way, you get to a position which is, well, the engine rates it as a little better for white. But in this case, the material stays even, and black has a majority on the queen side and more space, and white has easy development for his pieces and a solid structure on the king side. But it looks like black is going to be able to develop his pieces, and well, we have a game. That's all I can say. It's these positions lead to interesting games for both sides, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. So I'm always happy to play this from either the white side or the black side. Anyway, in this position, my opponent castled, and I went ahead with c5. It looks like bishop b7 is a move there as well, maybe the main move. And now the main response, I wasn't actually aware of this, There's this move a4 here, which is an interesting idea to keep in mind, since black has pushed his pawns forward like this, similar to the Ruy Lopez, where you get this queenside pawn structure. A lot of times this a4 move undermining it is a good plan for white. My opponent goes with rook e1. He has a different plan and a very interesting one. We're out of the opening book here. I went ahead and took here. Probably I should play bishop b7, but anyway, this is not too bad. Takes, and this move is my mistake. Bishop b4 is a mistake. I was aware, and if you stop to analyze this position for a bit, you might notice that there's this pin, and so in fact this pawn to d5 move is threatened right here, and you have to do something about it. And it looks like the best move is once again bishop b7. That's just putting the bishop on the natural square. Or bishop to e7, unpinning the e-pawn is also a playable move here. But I played the move bishop to b4, thinking I was accomplishing the same thing by pinning this knight. But it doesn't quite work. He can actually push on with d5 right here. And if I grab the pawn, he could really just take it. The thing is, there's this pin on the pawn, so I can never really take the knight back. I can grab the rook, but then I've given up 2 pieces for a rook. See, he's got 4 minor pieces, and I only have 2 minor pieces. So, and I still can't take this knight. So that's good for white. So let's see. In this position after d5, probably my best bet is to take off the knight. That's probably what I would have played anyway. And then he can grab the bishop. And I can take the pawn here, but there's still a trick. He has bishop to b5, desperado move with the bishop, and after I take the bishop, then he can grab the knight. So this pin on the e-pawn is a serious problem, and I didn't find the best way to deal with it. So here, when I played bishop b4, I should have played one of those other moves, bishop b7 or bishop to e7. Okay, so bishop b4. Well, he keeps an edge here. He plays bishop g5. He just didn't play the most accurate move, but that's a good move. And he gets some kind of attack going here. Rook to c1. He has this idea. You see, the engine doesn't actually approve of rook c1. He thinks the engine wants to play knight e5 right away. But he has this idea of rearranging his pieces on the queen side. He wants to get his rook out of the way so he can drop the bishop back and play queen to d3 and set up a battery against my king. Very interesting way to play. This is a pretty good position for white. I think white with the isolated queen's pawn wants to have active pieces, and he's got that. And I haven't yet set up a blockade. It takes me a few moves to get there. Go bishop b7. He goes knight e5 here, getting his pieces out. And now it looks like retreating this bishop back to e7 is the engine choice. Go knight b6, because I was still worried about this pawn push here. And well, it looks like this allows rook to e3. An interesting idea. The keeping the knight here and bringing the bishop back to e7 maybe is necessary for defense. I wasn't yet worried about the kingside attack, but it's really a very fast-brewing attack, and after knight b6, rook e3 is the most direct way to continue the attack. Still, he had this plan of bishop b1, queen d3, and he just continues with that. He goes bishop b1. And right here, I really should have recognized what white was up to. It's a very common motif to set up this battery and mate here. And if I had done that, I might have found this move h6, kicking the bishop. It's right now is the right time to play it. If I wait a move, for example, I played knight bd5. He went queen d3. Now it's too late to play h6. It's a very complicated line, but white wins after h6, which is not obvious, actually, I have to say. I avoided that on general principle because it looked too dangerous, this with the pin on the knight and the threat to trade it off. But actually, if he just takes the knight, I take back with the knight, and I'm still defending against the checkmate. But he has this move, knight g4, increasing the pressure on here. And anyway, it gets complicated, but white comes out on top. So I played g6, which is the way of solidly stopping this attack on that diagonal. And well, he repositions queen to h3. And now I start taking some material off the board. It's just too dangerous with all of his pieces here. So I start by taking the knight, which is interesting that the chess engine actually approves of that. and after he takes back, then I drop the bishop back to e7, bringing it over here and hoping to trade off some more of these pieces. And while white has an edge, it looks like I was successfully defending the rest of the game. So I'm just hanging in there. It's a tough way to play, just being on the defense all the time. But I did manage to find the way to do it. So I moved my knight out of the way to try and trade off the bishop. But he goes for bishop h6, hitting my rook. Right here I missed a trick. Right here there's an interesting move, bishop to g5, forking the bishop and the rook. And so if he takes my rook, I can take his rook, or he can trade bishops. But either way, I've gotten rid of some of the attacking force around my king. I had a different idea for defending. That was the move knight to g7, just blocking that diagonal. It's just not quite as good, and white keeps an edge here. c4, he presses on. I exchange. I didn't want that to become a passed pawn. He gets his rook active. And now I play bishop f6, trying to trade off some of these pieces here. It was knight to g4, and now I hit the idea of bishop to g5, really forcing some trades here. It's not a fork anymore, but his bishop has nowhere to go. So he plays rook c5. I take the bishop off. He does get this knight into an interesting square, where it checks my king and hits f7, but it looks like I'm holding. It looks like I'm defending f7 adequately at the moment. So, although the engine is indicating he could try the sacrifice, knight takes f7. Interesting. Okay, he played queen to e3 here, just repositioning the queen, looking for inroads into my position. So he's kind of moving it around. I oppose the rook here. I want to trade off more material. He takes. I take. And then he goes queen f4. He's got an interesting idea with the queen coordinating with the rook on the c7 square. Although the queen is also looking at this f6 square, which is kind of interesting too. I play queen to d7. What's the move here? Knight to f5 is probably a better move. I wasn't sure about knight to f5. The thing about knight to f5, I mean, it blocks the queen from getting to f6, but I thought he could always chase it away with a move like g4, so I wasn't so sure about that. Okay, I went queen d7, and I put his rook on the c file, and now I went knight f5. So I guess I decided it was okay after all. And now he plays rook to c7, attacking my... cancel that. He didn't play that? Oh, he took my knight off first. Yeah, that's the other thing about playing knight f5. He could always just trade it off. And then he played rook c7. So he's forking my queen and my bishop, and but I had seen this coming, and I thought I was escaping with queen d5, threatening checkmate. So he has to deal with that. He plays f3, and now I come up with this clever move. Well, first, no, I didn't find the move right away. I played king g7, which just gets the king maybe to a slightly safer square and puts a little pressure on the knight, keeps the queen tied down. He goes a4. I think he was a little bit out of ideas of how to proceed right now. And then I went queen e6, which threatens checkmate. It leaves the bishop undefended too, and he noticed that, and he took the bishop, and he didn't notice the checkmate. So that's how the game ended. But if we back up, all he has to do is play a move like king f2, and everything is fine here. But you see, it's about an even position, so whatever attacking advantage he may have had at various points in the game, I managed to defend well enough, or he didn't find the most accurate moves. And so I'm pretty pleased with my play in this game. It's always tricky defending like that. And it is interesting also, I wanted to point out that the chess engine finds a very clever way of defending against the mate threat. Let's erase this arrow. The chess engine recommends a move knight takes f5 check, sacrificing the knight. But if I take with the queen, well, then it's safe for him to take the bishop because there's no mate threat anymore. But if I take with the pawn, then he has queen to g3 check, which hits my king, but also defends the mating square. So after the king steps out of the way, then he can grab the bishop. And it looks like maybe he's won a pawn in this line, but I have queen e3 check, and I get the pawn back. And so it's once again just pretty much an even position. So I defended well all the way through, and then at the end he just made this mistake here, and I was able to mate him. So That's the moral for this story. Keep your eye out for those cheap tricks. When your opponent leaves a piece hanging, check to make sure he doesn't have something up his sleeve. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.